From now on, we'll handle the house ourselves. You should find somewhere else to live, my brother and his wife declared. It seemed like my mother was siding with them, treating me as though I were in the way. Did they not realize who had been covering the household expenses all this time? I was taken aback by their disrespect. A resolve began to form in my mind about what actions I would take next. I'm Carrie, a 30-year-old woman who's recently moved back into her parents' home. After graduating from college, I ventured into the workforce, only to find it far more challenging than I had anticipated, leaving me emotionally drained. This led me to return to my parents' house. Initially, I relied on unemployment benefits while searching for new job opportunities. Eventually, I discovered remote work and began working independently from home. With my university degree in a scientific field, I was able to leverage my skills as a freelance engineer. I began by taking on small projects. While the initial income was modest, working from home proved to be a valuable experience. Unlike traditional office jobs, I could earn a decent living with minimal social interaction, and I gradually built confidence in managing my own schedule. Over time, my work volume increased, and I began to take on larger projects, which led to a rise in my earnings. Within a year, my income matched that of a typical company employee. However, my parents, especially my mother, struggled to understand my work-from-home setup. My father was supportive once I explained everything in detail, but my mother, with her more traditional views, was wary of what she didn't understand. Despite my efforts to reassure her about my commitment to my job, she frequently questioned my decision. "How long are you planning to stay home?" she would ask. "At first, I thought it was for your mental health, but it's been over 2 years now. Maybe you should consider working outside more." I made every effort to explain my situation to my mother with complete sincerity, but she remained unconvinced. "You're just doing something online," she would say, often expressing suspicion. How could I make her see the reality of my work? Despite my detailed explanations, she remained doubtful. I showed her client emails and salary statements, but nothing seemed to change her mind. My mother even questioned whether I was involved in some dubious business or unusual religion. I reassured her that my job was legitimate and that I received regular payments. Yet her skepticism persisted. "Isn't there a chance this is just unemployment benefits? And those can't last forever," she would argue. Her worries seemed endless. I had considered moving out on my own, but I hadn't saved enough yet. Around that time, my father's health began to decline, and he required nursing care. Having retired early, he faced a sudden drop in income. "Dad, are you okay?" I asked with concern. "Oh, Carrie, I'm sorry to worry you. I have my pension, so I'll manage," he replied, though I could sense his apprehension. Given how much my mother spends, I wondered if he could really manage on his own. It seemed we'd have to rely on our savings for now. My father looked exhausted, likely anxious about the future. I had relied on his financial support throughout college and even after returning home due to mental health issues. Leaving him alone to live independently didn't feel right. My mother was also perplexed by his sudden condition. I decided to stay home and support them as much as I could. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll take care of things from now on," I assured him. "Really?" he responded, surprised. "I didn't think you had that much income." "Don't worry, Dad. My income is quite stable now," I said, showing him my bank account details. Knowing my father had always understood my situation, I hoped he would be reassured. "Carrie, I didn't realize you were so financially stable," he said. "Yeah, I've been earning more recently." "Then could you help us a bit?" he asked. "Of course. You've done so much for us. I'll support you from now on," I promised. "Thank you, Carrie," he said, visibly relieved. I began covering the household expenses, my father's medical bills, and numerous other costs. Each month, I transferred a set amount to my father's bank account to help manage the household finances. Since my mother had been using my father's credit card, I set up a new main card and gave her a supplementary card. My father saved as much as he could and encouraged my mother to do the same. When he suggested we needed to cut back, my mother protested. "So, what? Should we kick Carrie out? She's helping us financially. It would be much harder without her." Despite my mother's skepticism and suspicion about my support, my father eventually convinced her to let me stay. I continued to work while assisting at home. However, my mother took my help for granted and became very demanding. "Can't you finish your chores faster?" she would snap. "Sorry, but it's challenging since I'm working at the same time," I would respond. "You keep saying that, but is it really so hard?" she would question. My mother didn't seem to understand or listen to my explanations. I began to feel that our relationship was becoming irreparably strained. Thankfully, my father recognized and appreciated my efforts, which provided some comfort. We managed this arrangement for a year, but then my father suddenly fell ill and required daily hospitalizations. I visited my father in the hospital and greeted him with a warm smile. "Hey, Dad, how are you feeling today?" "Thank you for coming, Carrie. It doesn't look like things are going to improve soon, but I hope it's not too much of a burden for you," he replied. "Don't worry about that," I said reassuringly. "Taking care of you isn't a burden at all, but I can see that things between you and Mom have been strained. Since my father's hospitalization, my relationship with my mother had worsened. Living with her had become increasingly stifling, but I remained committed to supporting both my parents as a family. I appreciated all the effort my mother had put into making my lunches and dinners when I was growing up. Despite the current challenges, I still wanted to honor that. Then something happened that changed my perspective entirely. My mother addressed my brother Kevin, who had just arrived. "I've been waiting for you. You're late," she said sharply. "Sorry, Mom. I've been really busy," Kevin replied. "Hi, mother-in-law," Mary greeted. "Hello, Mary. Thank you for coming," I replied, still in shock. I approached my brother Kevin and his wife Mary, who both gave me a frosty look. Then, out of the blue, my brother said, "We're going to be living here too from now on." "Wait, what? Why?" I asked, taken aback. Mom was concerned. She thought it might be too difficult for you to manage the house on your own while Dad's in the hospital, he explained. I turned to my mother, hoping for some clarification, but she simply looked away. "I see," I said, trying to process the situation. My brother continued, "We hope this will help ease Mom's worries. We'll support you, Carrie." Mary, with a hint of a smirk, added, "I had a feeling there was more to this decision than just helping Mom." My mother said, "Thank you both for coming. Carrie, I hope you're prepared to contribute a bit around the house. Otherwise, it might be difficult for you to stay here." Although I hadn't expected my brother and his wife to move in, I knew that my brother, who graduated from a prestigious college and worked at a reputable company, must be earning a good salary. Still, I was putting in my own effort and wondered if they could manage without my support. Life with my brother and his wife proved to be more challenging than I had anticipated. "Perry, are you still asleep? Get up and make breakfast," my brother's wife shouted, banging on my door. "I'm already up. I start working early," I replied. As a morning person, this was my most productive time of day, and I preferred to work undisturbed. "Really? Then get moving and prepare breakfast," she insisted. "Do I really have to make everything myself?" I asked, feeling frustrated. Our family usually had a relaxed morning routine, eating whatever we wanted whenever we wanted. My mother and my brother's wife were both home, so I assumed it would be normal for my sister-in-law to prepare breakfast for my brother. "We're living together now, so we need to cooperate," my sister-in-law replied. Reluctantly, I helped prepare breakfast, but it seemed like my efforts weren't enough. "Is this all you've prepared for breakfast? It's not sufficient," they criticized. I had made a breakfast spread of soft scrambled eggs, a crisp lettuce salad, fresh buttered toast, and juicy sausage. I thought it was a decent meal, but clearly I missed the mark. "Well, if it's not to your liking, you don't have to eat it," I retorted. The three of them looked taken aback. "What's with that attitude? Who do you think you are? This isn't acceptable. You need to pitch in with the housework," they scolded. "But I have work to do too," I protested. "Oh, work? Really? What kind of work is that? Are you serious?" My brother and his wife shot back, their disbelief evident. My brother, in particular, seemed to constantly belittle me, likely influenced by my mother. He mocked my concerns. This was consuming a significant portion of my work time. I grabbed my laptop, shoved it into my bag, and left the house. "Wait, where are you going?" my brother called after me. Ignoring him, I headed straight to my father's hospital room. When I burst in, he looked up at me surprised. "Carrie, what's the matter? You seem flustered," he asked. I quickly explained the situation to my father. His expression turned to one of shock as he listened. "I had no idea they were treating you like this." "I'm so sorry, Carrie," he said. "Don't worry about it. You should follow your own path. I'm sure your mother would feel more comfortable if Kevin were around. You don't need to stay in a place where you're not happy. All I want is for you to be content, so live your life as you see fit." "Thank you, Father," I replied, feeling reassured. Encouraged by my father's words, I decided to move out. When I returned home that evening, I was met with a tense atmosphere. My mother, brother, and sister-in-law looked at me with stern faces. "Where have you been?" my brother demanded. "Kevin, weren't you supposed to be at work?" I asked. "Because of you, I had to take the day off," he retorted. "Taking a day off for that reason seems excessive," my sister-in-law added. Inside, I was taken aback by how easily my brother took a day off work. It seemed incredibly irresponsible to me. As the evening went on, the tone of my brother and his wife grew increasingly harsh. "Just leave," my brother said abruptly. "Why?" I asked, startled by his sudden hostility. "What's going on?" "From now on, the three of us will be living together," my brother continued. "If you don't want to stay, then you should go. We don't need someone like you, who only adds to the tension, to be a part of this." My brother and his wife made it clear they wanted me out. "Carrie, this is enough," my brother said firmly. "Now that your father isn't here, you don't need to stay." For some reason, my mother, like my brother and his wife, began to view me as a hindrance. Did she not realize how much I contributed to the family's finances? She regularly indulged in branded goods, but how would she cope if her spending money was cut back? I was infuriated. No matter how many times I tried to explain my role, my mother, brother, and sister-in-law ignored me. Their rudeness was too much to bear, so I decided to take a drastic step. I first transferred the funds from the bank account linked to my mother's credit card into an account that I controlled. I wanted to see her reaction when she found she couldn't use her card. Additionally, I moved some money from my father's account, which was meant to cover family expenses, to the same account. Only my father's medical expenses could still be paid from his separate account, which my mother was unaware of. As a result, a significant portion of the family's financial responsibility shifted to my brother and his wife. Although I didn't know the details of my brother's income, I was certain he would feel the impact more than ever. After completing all the necessary arrangements, I packed up my belongings and announced, "I'm leaving this place." My mother, brother, and sister-in-law were visibly shocked by my words. They had harassed me relentlessly but hadn't expected me to actually take action. Their surprised expressions were almost satisfying. "Finally leaving, are you? I've never met someone so troublesome. You won't be coming back, will you?" my brother said, his tone dripping with disdain. Their constant belittling was astonishing. "Of course not. Don't bother contacting me," I replied firmly. As I left, they gave me condescending smiles, but I couldn't help wondering how they'd feel once I was gone. I smiled inwardly as I began my new chapter. My new home was tranquil, and I could enjoy my own space. I felt completely rejuvenated and found myself able to focus on my work like never before. One day, just as I expected, I received a call from my brother. "I told you not to contact me," I answered. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice edged with urgency. "I heard you were responsible for handling all the money transactions at the family home. Is that true?" His surprise was evident. "Yes, that's correct," I confirmed. "Why are you asking now? Why did you tell me about this? We had no clue." I did mention several times that I was working, but neither you nor Mom seemed to believe me. "Well, Mom said a lot of things and I was confused, so it's not entirely my fault, right?" "No, it's not, but I'm facing a financial problem. Mom's been spending excessively, and on top of that, we haven't been able to cover the house utilities and other expenses. I was able to manage everything because I was supporting you in many ways. Now that I'm not living there, you need to handle it. Carrie, I really need your help to transfer some money to my account." "What? Please, can you transfer some funds right away?" "You've got to be kidding. You work for a big company, don't you?" "Actually, I was let go from that job." "What? Why?" "I made a big mistake," my brother admitted. "Was that before you moved back into our parents' house?" I asked. His response left me momentarily speechless. I suspected my brother had returned to our parents' house under the assumption that there was ample money available. He likely thought the household would be supported comfortably by my father's pension after his retirement. It was tempting to tell him that I had been managing the family finances, even though it appeared I was doing nothing. I could almost picture his surprise upon realizing that I had been keeping the household finances afloat while he had assumed everything was stable. The same went for my brother's wife and my mother. "We need your help," my brother's wife said urgently. "Our savings are nearly depleted." My mother said, "Your father is really upset about this. He says he won't contribute any more money to the household. We're in a terrible situation." You know what? I've done enough. You're all healthy, so you should work hard and support yourselves. I'll be cheering you on from afar. I heard a panicked voice on the other end of the line. Think about your actions. I'm hanging up now, so don't call me again. But Carrie, wait. I then distanced myself from my brother, his wife, and my mother. My father also decided he could no longer continue living with my mother and sought legal advice. He moved to a different hospital and settled quietly in a new location. Fortunately, I was able to visit him every day. A friend updated me on my brother's recent situation. He had moved into a small apartment and seemed to be living on a tight budget. My mother, who had been a homemaker for years, was struggling with the demands of her new job. My brother, accustomed to his position as a college graduate, found it hard to take advice from younger colleagues, and his part-time job didn't last long. Among them, my brother's wife was the only one who worked diligently to support the family, but the pressure eventually proved too much for her, and she left. Now, my brother and mother are trying to manage together. Unfortunately, my mother's habit of overspending hasn't changed, and her debts are continuing to pile up. While I'm concerned about her, I can no longer assist her. I'm focused on thriving in my own comfortable living space, steadily increasing my income, and considering new ventures. I'm also making it a priority to visit my father daily and cherish our time together, hoping to see his cheerful smile more often.